Hey there, and welcome back to this new project. This time we're going to talk about how I set up a local MCP server to connect Workflowy to a bunch of different large language models. So the problem that kickstarted this whole project was that in my previous project, the last video that I did, I set up an MCP server using Vercel. So on Vercel's infrastructure, and then I had a database that connected to, and we used it for caching, for bookmarking different parts of the Workflowy account to make it easy for the AI to then reference different parts of the account, not have to search through everything when we gave it instructions like put it in my notes or check my calendar, things like that. And so while I showed you how you could set it up, and even if you used it all day, every day, you really were never going to see a bill from Vercel or from our database provider, whose name is slipping my mind at the moment. But again, they had very generous free tiers. And for a hobby project like this one, really, we would just never have to pay a cent for using that. However, that was still too complicated. I think maybe a handful of people actually took a look at that, and maybe just one or two actually did something with it, because I think at least two people forked the project and decided to do something with it. But for most people, this was just too much in terms of the technical challenges and the messiness. So I thought about how I could make this even easier for anyone to use, not just as a cool project that anyone could download or play with, because this project, like all the other ones on the channel, are open source. You can look through the entire code and use large language models, or if you're a developer yourself, you can tweak them, upgrade them, do whatever you want with them. So really, I'm kind of doing all of these not just for myself, but as starter projects. You can think of them as a step beyond boilerplate. It's not just a blank project, but there's something in there that does something. It's got some functionality, and you can start to tweak it, play with it, learn how it works, and you can make it even better and incorporate the things and features that you want. So that's where the idea to transition the project into a local MCP server came about. I wanted something ridiculously simple. You just download it, get your Workflowy API key, put it in there, validate it, done, and then you just connect it to whatever large language model you want to. And there are a bunch of different options for that. In this video, I'm going to show you how that is actually done in case you want to play with it yourself. And just to review from the previous video, in case you forgot or you've never heard of what an MCP server is, or what MCP stands for, Model Context Protocol. Essentially, it is the protocol that lets these AI models connect to a bunch of different third-party applications. It lets the AI do things on your behalf. The MCP server provides a series of instructions and a series of tools with descriptions. So it knows, hey, you've got this toolbox of things you can do. You can connect to this service, and here are the things you can do with it. And so when you ask the model to do something like set up a reminder for me, or update the database, or draft a document for me in a such and such folder, it's able to do that because it has the ability to connect to those services. In the case of our local Workflowy MCP server, we're going to be allowing the model to do things that we would do, like read our notes or add bullets or tasks, search through my notes, all kinds of things like that. Things that you'd be able to do yourself, but connecting it to a large language model allows you to close that loop that I find myself, and I believe other people are currently in. That loop being, you're talking to some AI model and then it's doing something on your behalf, or you're using it to research, to draft, to brainstorm, make connections, a bunch of different things. And then you want to store that information for later, because obviously most of the applications that let you talk to AI are not really well suited for storing notes or making connections or things like that. They are purely for conversations or for one-off transactions. You upload an image, it analyzes it, it generates a report, and then if you don't save it, it's kind of gone. So having someplace to put that, like your Workflow account, is a really nice way to handle that. So how I actually went about solving that was creating an app that runs locally on your computer, so we don't have to use servers, we don't have to use external databases, input our credit card information anywhere, or worry about somebody compromising our service, or a nefarious party messing with our server, racking up a giant bill for us, and then having to foot the bill. So having everything run locally is just much better. It's easier and it's less of a hassle. So like I said, this runs on our computer, and I ended up using Tauri. I'd never used it before. After a bit of research, again with AI, I had originally thought about going with Electron, which is like a mini version of a browser. So then you can use all the standard web technologies to deploy applications. And then Electron is just a wrapper around a web browser that runs that application. So essentially, it lets you take a web app and kind of package it as a desktop application. And that works pretty well. A lot of very popular and big applications actually do that. For example, I believe Discord does it. I think Slack does it. And there are a bunch of other ones that use this model. But because this project was so simple, it's really just a very tiny MCP server, I thought that might be overkill. Also, I had some issues in the past with Electron. I don't know what it is about me and Electron. We just don't get along. So I decided to try something a little bit different. And I went with Tauri, which is a Rust-based framework for cross-platform applications. It's meant to be more robust, more lightweight, and still allow you to use all the web technologies that you might be familiar with, or the AI you're going to be using to code is going to be familiar with to create the application. And then for the actual database, I went with SQLite, just because we do still need a place to put the bookmarks and for caching. So I just went with SQLite. That seemed to work just fine. Now let me show you where you actually get the project. The link for this and everything else shown in the video, as always, is going to be in the video description. So you just open this link up, and even though it's still on GitHub and it still looks confusing as ever if you're not familiar with platform, all you really need to do is on the right-hand side, right below About, you've got releases. So you can click on either releases or the latest one. And here's where you find the downloads for the project. So we have .dmg for Mac, .exe for Windows, .msi for certain type of Windows environments, and the binary if you decide to do this on Linux. So they're all here, all set for you to download and install. I'm going to go ahead and do that for the Mac version, which is what I'm currently using. All right, and I've installed the application on my machine. One kind of annoying thing about these projects on Mac is that the operating system on Mac, as you might be aware of, is very locked down. That means Apple does not want anybody messing with it, installing unsigned applications like the one I'm providing to you on GitHub today. So you do have to do just one tiny step, and that's right here. Under installation for Mac OS users, you could read the instructions right here. I'm just going to show you how to do it because it's easier this way. So here I've opened up a terminal window, and we're going to copy this bit right here. You could copy the entire thing just for reference or to make it easier for yourself. And then in the terminal, it's a little bit bigger so you can see it because it is ridiculously tiny. Paste it in here. This is the part that is important. And this part right here is just supposed to point to wherever our application has been installed. So I'm going to just get rid of all of this. And then the easiest way to do it is in a Finder window, open up wherever you've installed the Workflowy local MCP application and literally click and drag it right into the terminal. So like I'm doing right here, what that's going to do is actually just write out the path for where the file is, which is what we need. And then you just hit enter. You're not going to get any confirmation, but what we've done now is we are giving it permission to run. So now we can just open it up the way you would any other Mac application. So we've downloaded the app. Now we need to get our Workflowy API key. You can find that at workflowy.com/API-key. And it's going to look like this. This is what the page looks like. And here you copy your API key. As always, with any API key that you use, not just the Workflowy one, but for your large language models and any other services that you use, you also want to be sure to keep these private. Don't share them or post them anywhere, because this allows whoever has that API key to have access to whatever service it belongs to. So we've got our API key, and now I'm going to add it to the Workflowy local MCP app. And here's what the application actually looks like. So we have a bunch of different options on the left-hand side. Here is where we want to paste the API key we just generated that belongs to our Workflowy account. Click Validate and Save. It's going to confirm that our API key has been saved. And it's also where you can change the key if you want to change it to a different account or get rid of it for whatever reason. Now let me walk you through the rest of the app. We have a Setup tab, which has some of the more common connections you might want to use with the MCP server. So we've got one for Claude Code, for Claude Desktop, and for Cursor. It doesn't matter. They are pretty much standard. Just try one. If it doesn't work, try another one. It's going to work just fine. And as you can see, the only thing we're really doing is listing Workflowy as an MCP server, and we're pointing where the configuration file is for that server. So I'm going to go to this first one here. They're all pretty much the same. Copy that configuration, and we'll use it in just a moment. Next, we have customized tools. Here at the top, we have the server instructions. You can think of this as the top level instructions that the AI model is going to read through. And here's where you want to list basic instructions about flows and how the different tools are used. And if there's any synergies or there's a certain order that you want it to follow, here's where you would put that. So I've written these out for you already, you can feel free to modify them. That's what this box is here for. You can make any changes you want. They'll automatically save and you can just use them like that. So you don't need to do any complicated things. If you mess them up or delete them or whatever, you can just click reset and it'll give you the default instructions, which I've tested and they sort of work, but there's a lot of opportunity for tweaking them, making them a lot better. Below that, we have the different tool descriptions. So these are all the tools our AI is going to have access to with Workflowy. Some of them are direct API calls, so like get targets or create node or update node. That's just us wrapping the API and letting the model access the API directly. Some of the other ones like delete bookmark, Workflowy doesn't have these bookmarks. This is not part of the API, but it's actually letting the AI connect to the system we use for caching, for creating bookmarks, reading the bookmarks, those things. That's why we have so many different tools that the AI can use. And just like the base prompt, you can open any of these. This is the description for that tool. You can tweak it if you find that the AI you're using is getting confused about when to use a specific tool or what this tool is actually for. So you can go through the instructions and create your own little flows. If there's a specific order you want it to follow, or in certain cases, do this or don't do that or use this tool, you can write all that out in the server instructions. Or if you just wanted to use the tool in a different way, you can update this as well. Below the tools, we have bookmarks. And so this is our way of making it easier for the model to know where the different nodes in our account are. Workflowy, as you know, doesn't use files, it uses nodes. So every single item in Workflowy has its own ID. And that makes it both very flexible to use as a person, a little bit more difficult to use as a large language model. And so one of the ways that we can make that easier for the model is to give it some signposts by bookmarking certain areas in our account, letting it know, here's where I've got my diary, here's where I've got my calendar, here's where I've got my projects. Search through an account that's maybe very deeply nested. We can give it some signposts to help it speed up that process and just make it a lot easier for the model to not get confused. So when it does bookmark something, you'll be able to see that update automatically here. You'll see the node ID, the name you gave it. You can give it any name you want. You can also delete it if it got it wrong or you actually don't need to use that anymore. Below that, we have the cache. It just lets us know the cache system's status. So this node caching is actually a result of me trying to speed up the system. Again, going back to just the way that Workflowy is set up, it's not a bunch of files. It's a bunch of individual nodes, which are referencing a bunch of other nodes. So it's a bunch of points pointing to a bunch of other points. And that can sometimes be very slow for a model traversing through those trees. So this caching process allows the model to pull either your entire account or chunks of your account to make that process a lot easier. And then it can apply other tools to it, like search. The Workflowy API currently does not have an endpoint for letting us search through our account. So what we do is we cache the entire account, and then we provide the AI with tools to perform searches. And then that's how it figures out where things are without having to constantly navigate the entire tree. It'll automatically sync by itself, but you can also force it to sync if you need to do that for whatever reason. And lastly, we have the logs. This is not particularly interesting. It's just going to let you know when the API key has been validated, when you connected, kind of very bog standard stuff. So that's it. It's pretty simple. The only thing you really need to mess with is this here. You need to give it your Workflowy API key, save it, and then copy whichever setup JSON you want to use. I would just copy the first one, which is what we're going to use. So now we've set up the local MCP. We've given it our API. What do we actually connect it to? So I showed you could connect to Claude, you could connect it to Cursor, any tool that accepts MCP servers. But the one we're going to use in the demo is a different one, which I'm finding really useful and I want to highlight today. So we're going to connect it to Cherry Studio. Cherry Studio is a pretty interesting project. It's an open source one that lets you connect a bunch of different large language models, AI tools to one centralized front end. So it's not just working in the terminal. If you like to do that, that's fine. But if you prefer an interface that's maybe a little bit more familiar to someone who isn't a developer, Cherry Studio is definitely an option worth checking out. So the part I'm going to focus on for the video is just setting up the MCP server. But just know you can do a ton of things with Cherry Studio. You can create your own agents, give it instructions, give it access to files, all kinds of really interesting creative things, and also connect it to MCP servers. So to do that, we're going to go right here to settings and then open up MCP servers. And now we're just going to click add and import from JSON. So here we can just paste that JSON that we copied from the local MCP app. Click OK. As you can see, there's not anything complicated to it. It's just MCP servers. It's Workflowy is the only MCP server we have, the type that it is. This is what it allows it to not have to deal with external servers. It's using like sub processes that the large language model is actually initiating. So it's pretty interesting stuff. The important part is you're not using external servers. It's all running locally. And this is just where the configuration for the server is. So that's all you're adding. Once it has been added successfully, you'll get a little confirmation here. It's version 1.00, the type of MCP server it is. And if you open it up, you can see some information like where the file is stored, the tools that it recognizes. You can also set different permissions for the tools if for whatever reason you don't want to let the AI ever delete nodes, or you want it to only prompt you to confirm if you want to delete nodes, you can do that here. Basically, it's just a way to confirm that the tool has been detected by Cherry Studio. So once you have that, now I'm going to go into the main chat mode. And here I've got some prepared conversations just to show you that it does work. If you happen to be doing this, the way you actually enable MCP servers for your agents or your chats is down here in the main chat box. There's a little hammer looking icon, and you can either set it to auto, so it'll let the AI automatically look for the MCP servers if you want to let it do that, or just enable a server. So I'm just going to do that. And that's it. You just start chatting, and now it has access to that prompt that lets it know, hey, you've got access to the user's Workflowy account. These are the different tools that you can use, and here's how you use them. So I'm just here asking it to get my top nodes. It's detecting the MCP server, and it starts to make the calls to it to get our node tree. And here it's showing me exactly what I have in my account. So pretty simple stuff, but you can also do other things like if you're having a conversation with the large language model, put this stuff in there, save it into my Workflow account in this specific place. So here I'm telling it to add this checklist to today's date. You notice that's not in here. It's going to have to figure it out. But because it has access to the tools that it needs to traverse our Workflowy tree, and it has the caching and it has the search, the agent is going to be able to handle it on its own. So it's going to try to get the node tree, going to sync the nodes, and then perform a search because it's looking for something and it's not obvious where it is, but it found the calendar. And so then it's going to create the nodes that we asked it to create. There we go. It's just confirming that it's added the tasks for January 20th, 2026. Next, what I did is I asked it to bookmark where the calendar is because it took a while to figure out where it was the first time. So this is now using that extra functionality we have because we're using the MCP server, something that Workflowy doesn't currently have. We can save a bookmark to that location. So the next time it's able to look in the bookmarks that it has, know what the ID for that node is, and not have to traverse the entire tree just to figure out where the calendar is. And so then I had another conversation with the model, this time without any additional context. I just started out, do I have any items for today? So because it has access to the cache, it has access to the search functionality that we gave the model, it can now handle that on its own. It can search for the calendar. It can search for today's date. However it chooses to interpret that question, do I have any items for today? And it finds correctly the current day and the items that we added in the previous conversation. So if we give it the right tools, the model is going to be able to actually do all kinds of interesting things for us. And we can do that now with natural language. So if it's smart enough, it's going to be able to achieve whatever objective we give it. And that is pretty much it. That's how you connect the local MCP server to your Workflow account and have AI models talking to your notes and doing all kinds of interesting things. This is just scratching the surface. I was mostly interested in the technical aspects of, can this be done? Can we implement the caching? Can we implement search? But actually using it is something I'm saving for a different video because this is a project that I started about a month ago. Yeah, so if we check the GitHub repository, we can see that the last update was about a month ago. Since then, I've been experimenting with some other ways to connect Workflowy to different AIs and the kinds of interesting things that can lead to. So this was just the very tip of the iceberg. There's a lot you can do if you decide to download, install the project, and start to play with it. If you do decide to play with it, I recommend you first test it out in a brand new temporary workflow account just to see if you're comfortable with the way that it's working and adding things and moving things. And if that looks good, then I would switch it over to your regular workflow account. So that was it for the local Workflowy MCP app. It was quite a challenge. I hadn't worked with some of these technologies, especially Tauri. And now I'm really motivated because it was super easy to use. And it was really nice to be able to create an application, not just for the MCP server, but now I'm thinking about all kinds of different things I could use that framework for, just creating cross-platform tools that I want for myself and I would put on GitHub for anyone to use. And then just one last thing I'd like to mention before I close the video is that I hope it's coming across how completely out of my depth I am with these different vibe coding projects. However, I'm still able to make things work. I'm still able to get use out of the things I'm building. So if you're someone who hasn't experimented or played with using AI tools for coding because it seems too complicated or confusing, rest assured that that is also my experience. I'm also constantly confused and not sure what I'm doing, but AI is a tool just like any other tool, and there are good and bad ways to use it. If you're just hoping the AI is going to write all the code for you and you don't have to look at it, you're just expecting a nice polished end result, that's probably a bad way to use AI. And obviously you're not trying to learn absolutely everything. It takes years and countless hours to actually become a developer. Even so, I feel that dedicating just a couple of hours a week on these passion projects that you might have, or just little tools that you might be interested in putting together, can teach you a lot about how you might start to become slowly, a bit by bit, a real developer with help from AI. So you do need to actually learn how these things are put together, why they're put together a certain way, what are the correct ways to do things, incorrect ways to do things, better ways to do things. And you'll learn all of that by messing up a bunch of times and then asking a bunch of questions. So that's something I do constantly throughout these projects. When it's recommending that I do something or do it a certain way, I always like to ask, why are we doing it that way? Are there better ways? What are the pros and cons? And that teaches me a lot about these different technologies. And even though I'm not writing the code myself, I do learn a lot and I start to get a better sense over time of how these things are put together correctly. And that gives me a lot of motivation and confidence to take on ever more challenging and ambitious projects. So I really hope that's something we're both going to get to see as the year progresses, taking on ever bigger challenges, more exciting projects, learning a lot more, and that the things we're going to be doing at the end of the year are going to make this look like a little toy example. Okay, so that's finally it. If you want to download the project yourself, add your API key and start playing with AI and Workflowy, the links, as always, are in the description. Next time, we're going to be taking a look at some Telegram bots that I put together to help me both with my ADHD and to try and learn a little bit more Japanese. So be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss that. Until then, I'll see you in the next one.